At the moment I'm trying to reorganise my A format science fiction collection, which some of you asked about, to try and fit more books in. Currently I have a lot of them, they're text blocks out like this, which doesn't look very attractive, but does allow me to fit a lot of them in. So bear with me, and I might do a bit more shooting around this, and then maybe I'll be able to show you at least some of my A format SF collection. Hi, welcome to Outlaw Bookseller. This is Stephen E. Andrews with yet another science fiction top 5. As the author of 100 must-read science fiction novels, I've been reading SF for 50 years, selling it for 37 years in different bookshops around the UK, 19 bookshops in total. And over that time I've developed a lot of expertise, knowledge, information about the genre, and I talk to SF readers pretty much every day. I talk to writers, so I do have my finger sort of on the pulse. Once you're in SF in book selling, it's very hard to get away from it, because even though more people are interested, you do become rather sort of identified with it, and it doesn't limit you, but you do tend to turn out to be that guy, which is okay, because I'm used to it, because I've been doing that since 1984. So I want to talk today about 5 writers who've really done a lot for my reading enjoyment in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. These are the science fiction writers working in Britain who I feel are doing the best work at the moment, and I mean that in terms of quality, innovation, taking the genre forward, and really bringing that sense of the different and the unusual and the new and the fine literary quality that SF should have, the same as all of the fiction too. So this is not going to be about names you'll essentially know. It's not going to be about Peter F. Hamilton or Alistair Reynolds or Ian M. Banks or any of those people. This is going to be about some writers you might not have read. I might give a quick mention to Adrian Tchaikovsky, you never know. But these are my sort of top 5 writers who I've been enjoying the last few years and whom I recommend books by all the time at the bookshop I worked in. So this is a ranked list, so I don't normally do that, but I've kind of gone from a 5 down to 1 this time, just for a change. And I'm going to begin with somebody who has been writing SF for quite a long time. He worked as a social worker. I met him once, and he's a really nice chap. I did an event with him back in about 2017, and that's Chris Beckett. And this is Chris's book Holy Machine, which came out I think in 2007. Let's have a look. Let's just check that out. And oh, it's signed. That's nice. There we go. And Chris signed that for me. There we are. And yeah, I think this came out in 2004 in Cosmos Wildside and 2010 in Corvus, so I'm a bit out of date there. This is the Cosmos Wildside hardcover, which they also did in an A format paperback. Really handsome book. There we go. And let's see, did I get Chris to sign this one for me? I'm sure I hope I did. Yeah, there we go, and I got him to sign that for me as well, so that's great. So The Holy Machine. The Holy Machine is a book set in a future where there is only one secular state left on the planet. Religion has resurged in a major way. As we're seeing, fundamentalism is on the rise. The irrational belief in the supernatural is sort of coming back, despite the fact that we live in a highly technological world. And I was drawn to the idea of a SF novel that showed one secular state, which has been specially formed for people who are secular worldwide to go and live in. So it's from a humanist perspective. And Holy Machine, this is my sort of favourite cover. They have changed the cover recently, but you might be able to pick this one up. The new cover is darker, and they're trying to get a common livery together for Chris's books at Corvus at the moment. And the premise behind this is a young man from the secular state decides to go travelling, and he encounters a robot, a prostitute robot called Lucy. And it's very, very unusual, because he feels there's more to the robot than just her being a robot. So what he's doing is kind of illegal, so he flees, taking Lucy the robot with him, and they go out into the religious world with interesting consequences that involve a messianic development. And this doesn't pull any punches. It's very uncompromising and confrontational, and that's what I loved about it. and it's just a great book. And even though I've read more of Chris's books, I do go back to this one. This is my favourite. I follow his career quite closely. I think he's a very fine novelist. He's doing more experimental work as he goes on. But this is a great starting point. His Arthur C. Clarke Award winner was Dark Eden, which is the first of a world-building trilogy. And I'm not so keen on world-building, but if you like that sort of thing, then you'll absolutely love it. It is great. It's just not so much my kind of thing. I prefer singletons. So Holy Machine, far better than what some of the mainstream writers are doing with AI. People like Ian McEwan and certain Nobel Prize winners. You know, this is the real stuff. So it's in a tradition of long sort of set of robot and AI novels, the Holy Machine. So do give it a try. If you can find the Cosmos Wildside in the A format, it's really pretty. Look out for it. So that's a favourite. Then somebody else who I discovered probably 6 or 7 years ago. She'd been writing for a while before that. We first met, I think, in round about 2008 at Litfest, very briefly, is Nina Allen. And Nina's produced quite a few books. She writes science fiction, fantasy, general fiction. She's kind of in the slipstream area. And there's a quotation on the back of this which sort of compares her to Angela Carter, maybe. Actually, it's not on the back of this, it's on the back of another novel. And I'm a big fan of Angela Carter, and I know she's influenced by Angela Carter, and there's definitely something there. And this is The Rift. For me, this is Nina's finest novel. She wrote a novel before this called The Race, a more recent novel called The Doll Maker. That's a promotional bookmark for The Doll Maker. And recently a book called The Good Neighbours, which is a kind of crime story with slightly odd references to quantum physics and fairies in it. And I got Nina to sign this to me when I went to an event that she did in Hunting Raven Books in Frome. I'm going to go and visit them one day and do a little feature on them because it's a lovely little bookshop. And this is The Rift. And I did an event with Nina at my own shop round about 2016, and she's a great lady and really inventive and really sort of chewy language. That she's really good at what I call the wallpaper of life. She could write mainstream literary novels, social novels without any problem, and she'd probably be, you know, more successful. But she is one of the writers that everybody who's interested in contemporary fiction should watch. But what I love about The Rift is that it's a straightforward narrative. Two women, sisters, one of them goes missing for quite some time, a few years, and then she reappears, gets in touch with the sister who's been wondering where she is, and the prodigal sister says to them that she's been on another planet. And, you know, the response is, as you can imagine, somewhat strained. And it looks at this idea, so is the prodigal sister suffering from some sort of hallucination? Is she maybe lying, fantasizing, or is there more to it? And what is the evidence? What are the facts in this case that would prove that she had been to another planet? And I absolutely love this. This is my favourite book by Nina. I think if she has a weakness as a writer, sometimes she does too much in one volume. That's part of her aesthetic, to draw certain things. So she has certain obsessions. She has obsession with dwarves, for example. Dwarves come up in The Doll Maker. They come up in The Silver Wind, which is a really great collection of short stories woven together to a novel. There's been a new, revised, expanded edition in the last few years. And, you know, she's really something. I sell an awful lot of this in the bookshop I work in. And I think it's exactly the sort of SF writing that people should move towards. Literate, intelligent. It does make you think. There's ambiguity in it. And, you know, it's really well crafted. So she's currently probably my favourite British female SF writer. I'm very fond of Emma Newman as well. But I love Nina's stuff. She's fantastic. Okay, so that's 5 and 4. Looking at number 3, somebody I followed on and off and have become very fond of in the last few years. He's been around a while, is Adam Roberts, and this is his novel The Thing Itself, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And the sad thing about The Thing Itself is that all of Adam's novels are published as hardcovers, hardcover originals. His short story collection Adam Robots was a trade paperback. And Gollancz, his publisher, obviously seemed to lose faith in him at this point and decided to do this as a paperback original, which is just sinful, because this, I think, is one of his finest novels. He's written about 20. And what I like about Adam is he never repeats himself. he doesn't do series. There is a short series, a 2-volume series called the Real Town Murders, which I get the feeling he's possibly been pushed in that direction by Gollancz, who are looking for series because they seem to have an obsession with that at the moment. This is a singleton. I've sold absolutely loads of this, and I've had great feedback from customers. One of my very good friends really hated it. All my other friends loved it, and it's great. I'm just going to read the blurb from the back. I saw the John Carpenter film The Thing for the first time recently. That wasn't one of the VHS tapes they gave us back then to watch on the base, for obvious reasons. That's not what it was like for me at all. That doesn't capture it at all. They, or it, whatever they were not thingy. They are inhuman. But this is only my dream of them, I think. So it's 2 men together on an Antarctic base, like in The Thing, which of course is based on the novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell from 1937. And the 2 men encounter something, and you think it's going to riff, pretty much on The Thing, but it doesn't. It does something else, because what they encounter is not a thing, but the thing itself, a vision of reality glimpsed through the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, and is far bigger, far scarier, far more playful and philosophical, and it's quite witty. The central character goes on a bit of a hegira, bit of a journey, and he has a conflict with the other character, and it's very sort of knockabout, and I personally think it's fantastic. It's got great ideas in it. It's original. So little SF is original. Adam Roberts is original. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. He teaches, I think, 18th and 19th century poetry. And, he's just had some great ideas over the years. And he's tackled every sort of kind of SF you can imagine. One of his things is to tackle every single trope. And he's getting through them. And he's always worth a look. So if you want something that's challenging to get you outside of the usual thing, which is exactly what you should be looking for in SF, to sort of wake you up and get the bucket of water in the face feeling, this is great. And it's great fun as well. So that's The Thing itself by Adam Roberts. My number 2 is a series, and I'm not that keen on series novels, despite the fact that publishers are trying more and more to get science fiction writers to write series. And most great SF novels, I'll say it again because it's worth saying, are singletons. They seem obsessed with this idea that people want more of the same, more of the same, more of the same. And yes, some readers do, but if you're in that ballpark, you will get bored eventually. And if you really like SF, if you like to see the paradigm shifted, you like to see the world opened up, to see things differently, then you need to step outside that. But I'll make the exception here, because this is Europe in Autumn by Dave Hutchinson, which again I've sold loads and loads of, and I think it's one of the very best science fiction novels I've read this century. And it's part of a series, as I say, which is called Fractured Europe. This is the 2nd volume, Europe at Midnight. The 3rd volume, Europe in Winter. And the 4th and final volume, Europe at Dawn. So they go autumn, midnight, winter and dawn. That in itself is original. It's not spring, summer, autumn, winter, or different times of the day. It's combining the two, and I really like that. And you might think this is a Brexit book. Well, it is and it's not. I mean, Europe in Autumn won the Arthur C. Clarke Award, or it was shortlisted rather. So I can't think I actually won that yet. Got Dave to sign that for me as well. And he's a great guy, very sort of self-effacing. I think he's really talented. And he's one of these people who, he started writing in his 20s, and he's a few years older than me. I think he's about 60, 61. And he wrote, I think, 3 or 4 volumes of short stories. And then nothing for years. He's doing journalism. And my suspicion is that he and writers like him were from the more literary end, because they just didn't want to do loads of space opera and Ian M. Banks rip-offs and crowd-pleasing stuff like that, which there's plenty of in British SF. I know people love it, but there is plenty of that, and we don't really need any more. We need different, unusual, envelope-pushing things. So I just get the feeling that his career went on the back foot because of that. But he's made a comeback. The saddest thing about these is there are no hardcover editions, which I think is a shame, but they're wonderful paperbacks from Solaris, one of the best things Solaris have done. I do think Solaris is one of the best publishers working in SF in Britain at the moment. I think Solaris and Titan are probably doing the best work. There is a little bit too much sort of formulaic stuff, but that's common with all publishers. But Solaris and Titan, keep it up, please. You're doing some great stuff. So this is partially it's not a detective novel, a spy novel. There are espionage elements, but they're sort of gritty and witty, rather like, say, Nick Herron or Len Dayton, as opposed to John le Carré. And they're set in a future Europe which is balkanized, is split up, just as we're seeing Brexit now. Maybe it will happen in the future. Maybe more places will go the way of Brexit. I've got a feeling they won't. But you see different countries evolving, and some of them are very small, the size of a block. Some are very, very big. So there are shades of China Michael's The City in the City, which is an okay book, but this is much, much better. To me, Dave Hutchinson's a superior writer. He's got more of a quality. He's not using smoke and mirrors. He is the real thing, I think. And this starts with a guy who's Rudy, who is Polish or Estonian, I can't remember which, and he's working in a kitchen basement of a restaurant, and you can feel the heat. You're sweating along with him, and he meets mysterious people there who want him to become a courier, to smuggle things across borders, because people have gone back to paper because the internet isn't secure. So he goes back to that, though there are cardboard laptops in this, which is really good. And for 2/3 of the novel, you're really kind of looking at a mainstream thing, and they have surprises. And I'm not really going to tell you, what the SF elements are, because I want you to read it for yourself, because I don't really want to give it away. But they've got great characters, marvelous plotting, very funny and sophisticated, and just great stuff. And Dave Hutchinson, an unsung hero, for me, the best science fiction writer of his generation in the UK. And it's a great shame that people like him, Adam Roberts, Nina Allen, and Chris Beckett have had to wait until their 50s or early 60s even to get the sort of acclaim they should have. And I can only put that down to the success of Ian M. Banks. In 1987, when Consider Phoebus came out, we hadn't had a space opera published in Britain by a British writer for several years, and it turned things back to like the 30s. And I know people love this, and I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but SF is more than just space opera. So it sort of all got turned back in a way, and I think it sort of held these guys' careers back, which is a shame, because they're very fine writers indeed. So Europe in Autumn, really amazing stuff. For my number one, I'm going to go to a favourite writer of mine of all time, probably my favourite living writer, and I'm going to be unashamed about this. It's very hard for me to pick which book I would say I've enjoyed the most in recent years, but I'm going to pick the latest one, because I simply can't decide, and that is The Evidence by Christopher Priest. I think Christopher Priest is the world's finest living SF writer, and I think one reason for that is that he straddles genres, and he steps back and forth over things. His specialist thing has always been about making you question the nature of reality. What's real, what isn't, unreliable narrators, confusing plots, deliberately so, and that's part of the fun. So if you can't get into that, you do challenge yourself and give it a try. And this is part of his Dream Archipelago sequence, a loose collection of novels, short stories, which started way back in the 70s with some short stories, then a novel called The Affirmation, which is one of the best SF novels I've ever read, which in its final line turns the world upside down. This is something Chris is really good at. And you get a kind of thrill of recognition when he starts to mess around with your narrative sense and what's going on. And this is about a crime writer who goes to a island further north, and there are strange magnetic anomalies and time things going on in the world of the Dream Archipelago, which is like Earth, but it isn't Earth, or maybe it's an alternate Earth. We're never really clear. And this is very playful. This is a book about writing, a book about telling stories, a book about misdirection, like The Prestige, and superbly entertaining, wonderful flat prose style. There are elements of crime fiction in here. I absolutely loved it, and if you haven't read Christopher Priest, you are missing out. Britain's finest living science fiction writer. Once J.G. Ballard died, that was it. Game was all Chris's. M. John Harrison is close. I would say Mike is more of a fantasy writer. They're both brilliant. They're different. They are chums, and I love M. John's work. But I feel this century his science fiction hasn't entered my top 5. Not this bad. I love it. But his more recent novel, which I would say is possibly a fantasy novel, The Sunken Land Will Rise Again, is, I would say just outside the SF thing. but we'll see. So that's Christopher Priest, The Evidence, absolutely marvellous. With a sort of nod to populism, I have enjoyed some of the works of Adrian Tchaikovsky. In another video about my current comfort reads for fun in contemporary SF, I mentioned Dogs of War, which I think is Adrian's finest book by a long chalk. If you've not read it, you've probably read Children of Time. Interestingly, the response to the sequel to Children of Time, Children of Ruin, was rather muted. I thought people didn't seem as enamoured of it, which just goes to show you can have too much of the good thing. You have a cake, you know, a couple of slices, you have the whole thing, and and you just get a bit sick of it. So, but this is a Tor novella, The Expert System's Brother, published in the USA. I got this from Forbidden Planet in Bristol. There is a sequel to this, and I see these as being related to the Children of Time series. To me, they're pantropy novels, where, in Children of Time, planets have been seeded with life, and we see the spiders, which everybody seems to really love in Children of Time. There's a similar thing going on here, and I regard it as related part of the sequence. And it's short, it's sharp. A lot of people complain about novellas, saying, oh, they're too short, you pay a lot of money for them. I mean, it's not about that, it's about quality. And, read a short book now and again. SF can work really well in short formats. So The Expert System's Brother, that's my bonus track, as it were, for this one. So those are my favourites of the last few years. Christopher Priest, not just The Evidence, but everything he's done this century and everything he's done per se. There's going to be a lot more stuff about Chris on this channel. Dave Hutchinson, Europe in Autumn, and its 3 sequels. Fantastic. Nina Allen's The Rift. Great stuff, Nina. Adam Roberts is The Thing Itself. And do seek Adam out. He's got lots of titles. Never repeats himself, as I say, which is what I love. And Chris Beckett, The Holy Machine. These to me are the books that, if you've done all the obvious bestsellery things, this is what you move on to next and broaden things out for yourself. So this is Stephen E. Andrews, Outlaw Bookseller, the voice of SF Experience, signing out for now.